Number 10. The missing link. According to a study posted by Cardiff University, scientists think they have finally found the missing link that foreshadows the Ice Age, and it's a little too real. What did they know before? Well, scientists knew that Ice Age cycles developed due to periodic changes in the Earth's orbit. The small variations in solar energy set off massive shifts in Earth's climate. But how remained a mystery. Well, now scientists think it has everything to do with the melting of the icebergs. Well, isn't that interesting? When the Earth is in the right position and icebergs begin to melt away from Antarctica, immense volumes of fresh water move into the Atlantic Ocean away from the Southern Ocean. Therefore, the Southern Ocean gets saltier and massive changes in circulation patterns pull CO2 out of the atmosphere. We know that the less CO2 in the atmosphere, the colder the temperature will be as it reduces the greenhouse effect. Therefore, Earth moves towards Ice Age conditions. Now, I think we can be a little more scared of the ice caps melting. Number 9. Lion cubs. Lion cubs in ice? Well, yes indeed. The world is strange and wonderful, and it was once covered in a lot of ice. Union and Dina were the first cave lions to be found, and another was found more recently in Yakutia, Russia. Both sets of remains date back to the Ice Age around 12,000 years ago. The species uncovered went extinct 10,000 years ago, and these poor babies died in a really sad way. Either their mother died or abandoned them, and the newest cub is so well preserved that you can see how it went to sleep with its little head resting on their paw. They also found 2 other cave lions, Boris and Sparta, in the same area, both perfectly preserved and 18,000 years apart. These 2 little cubs also helped establish the appearance of cave lions without manes. But the most exciting thing about the remains is that it could be used for cloning now that we completed the genome. Interesting. Number 8. A wolf head. The wolves we have now are pretty massive, but imagine how big their ancestors must have been. Pavel Efimov was searching for mammoth tusks in Siberia, Russia, when he made an unexpected discovery: the head of an Ice Age wolf, perfectly preserved. Its hair, teeth, brain, and ears are fully intact after can't believe this, after 40,000 years frozen in the permafrost. These massive creatures were a little over twice the size of modern day wolves and could crush bone with their jaws. Definitely not the most friendly of creatures. It would have been a full-grown wolf when it died, but it wasn't killed by humans. Why was the head separated from the body then? Well, scientists believe that it died originally intact, but with the melting and shifting and cracking of the ice probably separated them. The most exciting part is that now scientists will be able to study the evolution of the modern day wolf. Number 7. Disease. I think we've talked about this on the channel before, but here we are again. In August 2016, 21 people were mysteriously infected by anthrax. This is just one terrifying discovery that scientists have made beneath the ice. Researchers are concerned that some of the world's most deadly viruses are trapped beneath the permafrost from the Ice Age. And based on this event, they don't seem to be wrong. Not only are they worried about the potential resurfacing of the bubonic plague or smallpox, but something even bigger. Something we may not even have heard of yet. Due to the rapid rate of the ice melting, it is only a matter of time before we figure this out the hard way. We've survived one pandemic. Is another waiting beneath the ice? One layer away from revival? I really hope not. Number 6. Giant animals. Considering we have started this list off talking about a lot of animals, it seems to make sense that we highlight a theme here. Ever wonder what it would be like to live in the Ice Age? Me neither, except for maybe right now, because it's boiling right now. Oh, it's so hot. Never mind. Way too hot. We're just gonna take this off. Ironically, it's way too hot in the studio today, so here we are. Why? Because everything was so much bigger, and even imagining that terrifies me. Megafauna were large, oversized animals that lived around the time of the Ice Age. In fact, it was their playground. Not only was there of course the woolly mammoth, but massive saber-toothed tigers, short-faced bears, and of course the above, massive dire wolves. Plus, you can almost guarantee they were always hungry with food being so scarce. I wonder if people will look back in like 1,000 years from now and think about how small our animals are. But believe me, from giant wombats that could be mistaken for bison to killer birds, not a place we would want to live. But they also had some unique survival skills. For instance, the Ice Age rhino was believed to have had a shovel horn to help remove snow. That's kind of neat. Number 5. Human revival. Now, considering all the technology we have today, unless we have a day after the tomorrow kind of situation, if we have another Ice Age, we might be okay. Might. But I am pretty optimistic because Homo sapiens were able to survive the Ice Age, so why not we? Despite not being hairy or thick-skinned, they were resourceful and inventive, relying on traps to catch their dinner. The hunting tools they had would have been limited to stones, knives, and arrowheads. Anything more complicated would have been really rare. So instead, they used traps, and this is is where it would get kinda gruesome. Once their prey would fall prey to whatever traps were sent, the men would surround the injured creature and maul it to death. Hey, when you're hungry, and in a dog-eat-dog world, it's a privilege to care about how you will kill your next meal. Number 4, Mammoth House. What do you do when you don't have bricks and mortar? Well, you build a house out of, bones that you just find lying around. Yeah. According to an article posted in 2020, Russian archaeologists found a massive circle made of the bones of Ice Age creatures. The bones are from creatures that lived over 20,000 years ago. Not only are there 6 mammoths, but reindeer, horses, bears, wolves, red and Arctic foxes. And this isn't the only circle like it. There are around 70 Ice Age bone circles in 25 sites in Ukraine and Russia. Some of the bones were still joined together, which meant that they still had meat on their bones when they were added. In the middle, there are wooden poles that were presumably used to support roofs made of animal hides. There is still speculation as to whether they were used for homes, ritual, or storage buildings, but still, a house of bones sounds odd to us, I know, but imagine having to withstand cold without the tech we have now. Desperate times call for desperate measures. Number 3, mini ice ages. Did you know that we may get a mini ice age before we get a really big one? Like a test run, kind of, if you will. Though they aren't as deadly, they can still cause widespread famine and disease due to failed crops. The last recorded mini ice age happened between the 12th and 14th century, peaking from 1500 to 1850. It mostly took place in the northern hemisphere of Europe, where seas would freeze repeatedly and glaciers would crush whole villages. This happened quite often in places like Switzerland. But even worse, just like in Game of Thrones, they would go whole years without summer. No thank you. No one quite knows what caused this tiny ice age, but scientists have a couple of ideas. One, that it had something to do with volcanic activity, and that it had an effect on the solar energy the Earth was receiving. Whatever the reason, it definitely provides yet another explanation as to why the Middle Ages were just so sad. So sad. Number 2, more CO2 is a good thing? Considering the first point on this list, we know that less CO2 in the atmosphere will lead to colder temperatures, which could mean ice baby. But considering the very real concept of global warming and the fact that we are injecting so much carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, could that mean we will stave off an ice age? Well, scientists think this might be so. While we definitely need to figure out how to control our output so other problems don't arise, it could help fight off the next ice age, right? Weird. There's an upside to everything. According to Cambridge University, although the planetary cycle makes an ice age inevitable, like the seasons, the only way it can happen is if the CO2 level is too low. At this point, we have pumped so much CO2 into the air that even if it all stopped tomorrow, we would still have enough to keep an ice age at bay for at least 1,000 years. However, if we keep going the way we're going, well, goodness gracious, great balls of fire. Like, what do you want? Snowball? Hot Earth? Depends what you like, I guess. How the heck are we gonna get out of this one, you know? And last but not least, the snowball. What's more terrifying than an ice age? A giant snowball. No, not the one that you made to throw at your neighbor. I mean the one that could be our Earth. A snowball Earth is a very terrifying possibility, though probably not as likely. A snowball Earth would destroy much of life on Earth and sink our entire world into a deep freeze. And it did! The snowball Earth was a series of ice ages that occurred during the Neoproterozoic era that were so massive the entire planet froze over 500 million years ago. Why did it happen? Well, scientists from MIT speculate that it was due to a drop in heat so steep that it triggered a runaway effect. The ice expanded so quickly the Earth didn't have time to recover. This drop in temperature might have been prompted by several volcanic eruptions that happened in quick succession. Scientists are unsure as to whether humans could make this happen, but if it did, we wouldn't be able to stop it. At the speed at which the Earth's atmosphere is changing because of us, who knows what could happen. It could go so far it goes the other way around. You just don't know.
Number 10, dinosaur. When it comes to big things, dinosaurs were pretty damn big. Scientists were able to uncover the fossilized remains of a new and unknown species of dinosaur underneath the ice sheets in Greenland. When the dinosaurs were alive, the Earth was a lot warmer and more tropical, these fossils becoming trapped under the ice when the climate changed into the Ice Age. The skull they found is thought to be a two-legged plant-eating dinosaur of medium size, and they dubbed the new species Issy-Sinique. The dinosaur is believed to have grown to the size of 10 to 30 feet, and the skull they found is thought to be that of a younger dinosaur that had not fully grown yet. They used computer technology to create 3D scans of the head before sending the specimens to the Natural History Museum in Denmark, as they have sovereignty over the country of Greenland. It is the first known dinosaur to have been native to Greenland and is thought to come from the late Triassic period around 200 million years ago. Number 9. Bison. The massive carcass of a bison known as a steppe bison was found by a gold mining family in Alaska way back in 1979. They were using a mining hose and were melting a frozen block of ice, effectively thawing out the creature that had become trapped inside. The bison species is from the Ice Age, and the body that they found is thought to be tens of thousands of years old. Once they were finally able to fully excavate the body, they found other things alongside it, including hair, insects, wood, and different plants. When the pelt of the animal reacted to the soil around it, it turned the body blue, and so the bison ended up being dubbed Blue Babe. Analysis of the body showed it had died 36,000 years ago, a result of being attacked by an Ice Age lion. The ice allowed the creature to be incredibly well preserved, scientists even being able to find pockets of blood in the body. Number 8. Cave bear. This specimen found on an island in the Arctic was a very unique discovery, said to be one of the first of its kind. Researchers found a well-preserved body of a cave bear that was around 40,000 years old. Cave bears would grow to be around 7 feet long and typically weighed over 1,000 pounds in their adulthood. Before this discovery was made, they only knew about the animal from skulls and bones, and had never found a specimen that was this fully preserved. The body that they found had all of its organs still, and even still had its nose on its face, paired with its terrifyingly massive sharp teeth. According to one of Russia's leading Ice Age experts, the discovery of the body was of world importance and is the first and only find of its kind. The body was found by a group of reindeer herders on the island and was then sent around to various scientists to study the life of the animal. Number 7. Horned lark. Alright, some of these creatures aren't that big, but they're still pretty interesting, and size doesn't matter anyways. In 2018, fossil hunters were in the northeastern part of Siberia, known as the Pole of Cold, and they were tunneling into the permafrost. Deep underground, they discovered the body of a bird thought to be around 46,000 years old, but it was incredibly well preserved, and scientists say that it looks like it could have only died a few days ago. Researchers believe that it is the ancestor of the horned lark bird and is the first of its kind to have ever been discovered. It is also said to be one of the best preserved specimens ever discovered, as it was almost completely intact and still had all of its parts. The ice age that took place is thought to have generated many new species who adapted, and this is one of them. Siberia is home to a lot of frozen discoveries due to its freezing cold temperatures, and who knows what else is sitting in the ice, just waiting to be found. Number 6. Wolf. The Pleistocene era, or Ice Age, lasted from about 2 million to 11,000 years ago, and many great extinct creatures we've discovered come from this era. One of these discoveries was the head of a massive Ice Age era wolf that was still snarling 40,000 years after it had died. It was found in a cold region of Russia and is one of the first full-sized frozen wolves ever to be discovered. They found it in the summer of 2018, and it was described as having mammoth-like fur, sharp fangs, and was between the ages of 2 and 4 when it passed away. Because only the head was discovered, it only gave small clues towards the evolution of wolves and how they have changed and adapted over the years, but researchers were still able to reconstruct the head using 3D models and get a solid understanding of what these Ice Age wolves looked like. In fact, the specimen was so well preserved that it even still had parts of its brain. Number 5. Lion cubs. As I've mentioned before, Siberia is a place that is fairly popular for finding frozen specimens, and this time they didn't just find one animal, but instead 2 matching ones. They found 2 mummified cave lions that lived during the Ice Age around 30,000 years ago, giving them the names Sparta and Boris. They were found in 2017 and 2018 by mammoth tusk collectors, and one of the cubs was believed at the time to be the best preserved Ice Age animal ever found. It was originally thought that the two cubs they discovered were siblings, being only a few months old at the time of their death, but research showed that Boris had actually died about 15,000 years before Sparta. Sparta still had her fur, teeth, skin, organs, and even her whiskers, looking like she may have only recently died despite being a part of a species that went extinct over 10,000 years ago. If given the chance to grow up, the cubs would have managed to grow to 5 feet long and weigh almost 1,000 pounds. Number 4. Sharks. Creatures that are found frozen in ice don't always actually come from the Ice Age. There are plenty of cold places right now where animals can unfortunately become trapped, or pass away and then freeze. In Cape Cod, Massachusetts, it has become startlingly common for giant sharks to become frozen in the ice off the coast. A few years ago, they found a total of 4 different sharks that had all become frozen in the ice and passed away. The sharks were apparently becoming trapped in shallow waters during changing weather conditions, and sudden cold snaps would cause them to freeze and die. The thresher sharks that were commonly becoming trapped were apparently not a very well studied species, so the bodies that were found were taken and thawed in order to be dissected and researched. The Atlantic White Shark Conservancy even went so far to refer to the specimens as sharksicles, but probably not something you'd want to eat on a hot day in the summer. Number 3. Mummies. Human remains are usually found when archaeologists dig up large graves and find skeletons, but in a rare case they manage to find the well-preserved and mummified body of a woman. A group of hikers exploring an Argentinian volcano found the body of a woman who appeared to have died around 500 years ago. The body was well preserved due to the incredibly high and cold elevation at which it was found. It's believed that the body was there as part of an ancient sacrificial ritual, and the woman, named the Inca Ice Maiden, was sacrificed. She was given lots of food and drink before being led up the volcano, where she was left to die of exposure. The discovery of her body was also incredibly important because from samples they took, they were able to discover that she was fighting tuberculosis, and these sorts of samples can help us work towards fighting these diseases in the modern day. Number 2. Foal. In the summer of 2018, they found what they called the best preserved Ice Age animal ever found. Feels like they say that a lot. Anyways, mammoth tusk hunters in Siberia found the body of an around 42,000-year-old horse foal, incredibly well preserved thanks to the cold temperatures. They say that it was only about 2 weeks old at the time of its death, and they were able to extract both blood and urine samples from it. The discovery apparently pushed scientists closer to the hope that they could bring these extinct creatures like mammoths back to life. I think we should listen to Jurassic Park's warnings and just deal with the animals we actually have right now. I know you might be thinking that a baby horse isn't some terrifying giant Ice Age creature, but full-grown horses are pretty big, okay, and they're actually kind of terrifying. I mean, they basically walk on one giant finger. It's creepy, and I don't like it. Number 1. Baby mammoth. During the Ice Age, mammoths were one of the biggest creatures around, basically being massive furry elephants. This young woolly mammoth specimen was found in, you guessed it, Siberia. This incredibly well-preserved body of a young female woolly mammoth named Yuka is said to have lived around 28,000 years ago, and they were discovered around a decade ago. Due to her good condition, scientists were eager to conduct experiments, and one of those was taking cells from her body. When they put the cells together, they found that they were still active, even almost 30,000 years later, so they managed to technically revive Yuka in a way. At full size, woolly mammoths were usually around 13 feet tall and would weigh around 13,000 pounds, or the same as around 26,000 large oranges, if that helps you picture it.
Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have the zombie virus. Fear began to spread after a 48,000-year-old virus was found in Siberian permafrost. The revived virus, which has been given the name Pandora virus Yadoma, was extracted from the ice by scientists with the French National Center for Scientific Research, who warned that there could be
be more just like this one, or even worse, that are waiting to be unleashed on the world as ice that has been frozen for thousands of years melts all over the world. The lead microbiologist on the study, Jean-Marie Olympic, warned that there has been limited research so far into these live viruses that are starting to be seen all over the globe. This particular virus was found underneath a lake, and while it only infects amoebas at this point in time, some people fear that it could mutate in a way that would make it then become infectious to humans. The study warns that there have been people and claims that, quote, wrongly suggest that such occurrences are rare and that zombie viruses are not a public health threat. While it doesn't appear as if there's anything to worry about at this point, it's always good to stay informed. In our number 9 spot today, we have the glacier virus. Back in 2015, researchers retrieved glacial ice that came from more than 6,700 meters above sea level at the Galia ice cap in western China. The ice samples were taken for a study, and just recently the findings have been published. The lead author of the study, Ziping Zhang, said of the findings, quote, "These glaciers were formed gradually, and along with dust and gases, many viruses were also deposited in that ice. As it turns out, inside of the ice, researchers found dozens of viruses that had never before been seen by humans. Their research was said to find genetic coding for 33 different viruses, at least 28 of which had never previously been found, and some of the viruses date as far back as 14,500 years. Those who found these viruses will continue doing research on them in order to know more about what they are, who they can infect, and see how they may be able to inform our knowledge on the viruses that we currently see in our modern world." In our number 8 spot today, we have the 1918 influenza. In 1951, scientist Johann Holton tried to isolate the 1918 influenza virus from people who had passed away from it and been buried in the Alaskan permafrost in a town called Brevik Mission. During the time when the virus was active, 72 out of the 80 residents of the town fell victim to it and died. Although Johann was able to unearth the bodies, he was unable to find any live viruses. 50 years later, however, he would get a second crack at it. In July of 1997, he read an article that had been published in the journal Science that was written by a virologist by the name of Jeffrey Taubenberger. This article was the initial genetic sequence of the 1918 flu virus, and when Johann saw this, he offered his help in the research once again. He returned to Brevik Mission and got permission again to dig up the victims of this flu virus. This time, he found a person who he called Lucy. Lucy was a victim of the flu, and when she passed away, she was roughly 30 years old and was obese. The only reason I mention that is because it was important in how she helped the research. The fat actually worked to protect her lungs from decay, which allowed Johann to take both of them, and inside there was enough material to sequence the complete virus multiple times over. This allowed scientists everywhere some of the most valuable insight into the virus that anyone could have asked for, and allowed us to learn that the virus originated from birds before mutating to infect humans. In our number 7 spot today, we have the anthrax outbreak. Anthrax is not a new virus to the world, but recently, in a remote corner of the Siberian tundra, it has been rearing its ugly head once again. In 2016, in the Yamal Peninsula, which is located in the Arctic Circle, a group of people had to be hospitalized, and some even lost their lives as a result of an anthrax breakout. Scientists have explained that this breakout was caused by the thawing of the ground. The average temperature in Russia has increased 0.43 degrees Celsius in the last 10 years, but in some of the more northern regions, the rise has been more pronounced, and it has resulted in more thawing of the permafrost soil that covers Russia, which includes cemeteries and animal burial grounds. Anthrax spores can survive frozen in human and animal remains for hundreds of years, and as they thaw, they can be released back into the world in a multitude of ways. Humans weren't the only ones affected by this outbreak, as it is said that more than 2,300 reindeer also died as a result of the virus. In our number 6 spot today, we have Pithovirus sibericum. This is one of the 2 viruses that we'll be talking about today that were discovered by Chantal Abergel and Jean-Michel Claverie of Aix-Marseille University. The pair found the virus in a 30,000-year-old sample of Siberian permafrost that was buried 30 meters or 100 feet below the surface of late Pleistocene sediment. The discovery was realized when the collected samples were exposed to amoebas, which then started to die. When examined to see why this was happening, they were found to contain giant virus specimens. Like many of the viruses on this list at this point, the virus isn't a threat to humans, but its viability after being frozen for this long raises concerns for some about climate change and drilling operations that could potentially release more frozen viruses that are deadly to humans into our world. In our number 5 spot today we have Mollyvirus, part 2 of the viruses discovered by Chantal and Jean-Michel. This virus was found in that same 30,000-year-old chunk of Siberian permafrost. Its discovery actually marked the 4th ancient virus found frozen in permafrost since 2003, and it was quite a remarkable discovery. This spherical DNA virus wasn't just any old virus. The 30,000-year-old virus was found to have a special way of hijacking its host's machinery in order to actively replicate itself, even after all of these years being frozen in the ground. Many people refer to this virus as a behemoth due to the size of it. Scientists have warned that having 2 viruses that retained their infectivity being found in the same prehistoric permafrost layer is definitely a cause for concern. In our number 4 spot today we have ocean problems. As the climate of our Earth changes and ice melts, an unforeseen consequence is now being unleashed on mammals in the northern Pacific Ocean. Throughout the course of 15 years, researchers have found 2 new channels that link the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans between Russia and Alaska. This has caused some of the animals that live here to be interacting for the first time ever, and with this interaction comes the spread of a deadly pathogen called Phocine distemper virus. The virus had been seen before. In fact, it was first identified in European harbor seals when it killed thousands of them in 1988. It was seen again in 2002 and in 2004, but that time it was seen in northern sea otters in Alaska, which surprised researchers everywhere. This meant it had not only jumped species, but also oceans, which is what led to the study being done on how the melting ice is likely the culprit. Study author Tracy Goldstein, Associate Director of One Health Institute at UC Davis School of Veterinary Medicine, explained that, quote, "Animal health and human health and environmental health are so linked. If one deteriorates, then the rest do too." While the virus hasn't yet been seen to infect humans, it does affect those who live and hunt in the area and rely on these sorts of things. In our number 3 spot today we have the Alpine Project. This one is a little bit different than some of the others on this list because we are talking about one of the first ever projects that currently aims to study microscopic forms of life in the permafrost in the Alps, the Arctic, and the Antarctic. The project is led by Beat Frey of the Swiss Federal Institute for Forest, Snow, and Landscape Research. Of the research so far, Frey says, quote, "We found that these organisms have a particular metabolism and cellular structure which can be active at low temperatures." He continues on to say, quote, "However, most of them are asleep. The big question is what happens when they wake up due to climate change, for example." That is definitely the question this project is aiming to answer. While many scientists have expressed their concerns over the melting ice and what it could unleash, Frey shares these same worries, but also has some positive outlooks as well. He has said, quote, "In the alpine permafrost we have found bacteria, mushrooms, yeast, and viruses. Around half of them also exist elsewhere in the world. 1/3 are unknown." While the unknown can be terrifying, it also opens us up to the potential that not all of the microorganisms found in the ice will be harmful. They're hoping to find some species that also might be helpful or provide us a certain use, like in the medical or biotech fields. Frey said, quote, "We could use the properties of certain enzymes that are active at a low temperature. Bacteria found in permafrost could also prove important for gauging the resistance of antibiotics." It's just nice to have someone looking for the positives in this scenario that is pretty frightening to a lot of people. In our number 2 spot today we have the 8-million-year-old ice. Back in 2007, it was announced that Kay Biddle of Rutgers University in New Jersey, along with his colleagues, had been able to extract DNA and bacteria from a sample of ice that was found between 3 and 5 meters beneath the surface of a glacier in Antarctica. The ice was found in the Beacon and Mullins Valley, and the samples were dated to be somewhere from 100,000 to 8 million years old. Once collected, the researchers attempted to resuscitate the organisms, and they found that the younger ones began growing quite quickly, doubling in size every 7 days on average. As for the 8-million-year-old sample, researchers found only one type of bacterium, which grew at a much slower pace, doubling every 70 days. Through examining the average lengths of the DNA
DNA found in the samples, they were able to determine that frozen DNA does degrade over time, and they believe that this happens through cosmic rays, which are definitely the strongest at the poles of the Earth. In our number 1 spot today, we have the ancient microbe. John Priscu is a Montana State University professor, and he is also spearheading a study into Antarctic microbiology. Through his studies, he has been looking at some of the oldest ice on Earth for what he calls the bugs in the ice sheet. He has been able to find living bacteria in the core of a 420,000-year-old ice that he has successfully been able to grow in his lab. He explains that these frozen years for the bacteria is quite a fantastic evolutionary strategy for microorganisms because it essentially just stores them for a later re-entry into the world. He said, quote, "It's a way of recycling genomes. You put something on the surface of the ice and millions of years later it comes back out." Right now with the research, they're trying to figure out how these bacteria have the ability to live in such extreme cold environments, because it's possible that this sort of thing could lead the way to the discovery of life on another planet with extreme climates such as ones that are frozen.